Hey guys, what's up? Time for another game theory video, or really kind of a talking to a wall kind of video about games. But some people like these videos and it keeps the channel active because, I don't really feel like playing a lot of video games. I've lost a lot of will for them and, I'm busy with health shit and real life shit in the first place. But let's try to keep the channel active, right? Some people like these videos. ASMR, right? So let's talk about Guilty Gear Accent Core 10 years later. Accent Core is older than 10 years, but Plus R is less than 10 years old, I think. So let's just say 10 years sounds good, right? And when I make these game theory videos and my ideas and concepts about fighting games in general, I often talk about how there's no perfect fighting game. Sometimes you just like the fighting game at the time because it has your specific, the best version of that character that you like. You liked how that character played in that said game, right? Sometimes you like a game just because it's what your friends were playing at the time and you feel nostalgic for it, so you have fond memories of it, right? Every game has its good and bad. You just got to weigh, are the goods outweighing the bad, right? And I have videos talking about the dangers of progression, right? Games need to progress, but eventually there's only so much you can do with the medium, so eventually they can become oversaturated, right? And that's why you need new games then, right? And, that's why I say Dragon Ball FighterZ was such a flawed game, because drop ball, if you will, because there are actually new concepts, right? Watch those game theory videos, right? So, Accent Core. So I had me a thought. I've been reflecting on my life a lot lately. You know what I mean? You do that a lot too when you're in the hospital and you're just, what am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? And I was thinking, you know what? I'm almost now at 1,000 matches in Plus R, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing, right? I mean, I've played people, they're 10,000 plus almost 20,000, whatever the fuck it is, right? That's not a lot, right? And who knows how much these people have played in real life. And, if you think about it, and I can tell you, again, and I know this gets people mad, I don't play a lot of video games, right? And to talk about, I can basically tell you every time I've ever played Guilty Gear. Besides making these combo videos, right? I have that friend that me and him might play a few times a year, whatever it might be, because we're not always going to play Guilty Gear when we meet up. We might play a different game. And I know some of the haters in the community try to say that I only won local tournaments. Not true whatsoever, but I did actually enter a few local tournaments for Accent Core, which I won way back in 2008, I think it was, right? So, I had stopped traveling by 2008. My doctors had told me I could die. So I'd only entered a couple of local tournaments, which I won. But generally speaking, I didn't play a lot of Accent Core, right? Just played it a handful of times. And Plus R, again, we said, might play my friend a few times a year. And the only other time I had played Plus R is I told the story that Team Yase group found out where I live, and they asked me to come to their gatherings to play them because they didn't live too far. They lived about a half hour away from me. And I went there, again, I don't remember how many times it was, maybe 4 times or something in the entire few year span that I knew them, before I knew they were talking shit about me, basically, dude. And so maybe 2-3 year period, whatever it was, I went there maybe 4 times, and I think I beat them 50-0 each time, said thank you, and I left. So, you know what I mean? So the point is, though, I've never played the game a lot, right? And I've always had this, I can look at a game and tell how it's going to work. And 1,000 matches that I've almost played now, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot. And for sure, I made that video recently that I'm still very naive to a lot of the game. Like, I've played a lot of people, and I have a pretty insane win record, right, obviously, which I've showed some before. And this isn't me saying I'm good, right? Because the only ego I have is creatively speaking, it's not even close. But competitively, that ego is not there anymore. It's just a fact that I have done well for myself, right? But again, this isn't me saying that I would win tournaments or anything like that. And I am quite naive towards matchups and everything. But point is, I've played almost about 1,000 matches. My feet are somewhat wet in the game. Not as much as these dudes that devote their lives to it, whatever. And the thing is, after these 1,000 matches, you know what? There's been no, what should I say? There's been no epiphany. There's been no great realization. And everything I feel like I've said about the games before, they still stand, right? And I feel like it just really drives home everything that I've ever said about video games again. And that's what I said at the very beginning. There's no perfect game. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just like certain said character in the game. The dangers of progression and oversaturation. And I made videos about this in Plus R and why I didn't care to play Accent Core in the first place. Again, Accent Core, the original one came out, you know, my health was really bad. And, you know, I'd stopped traveling for tournaments and, Jesus Christ, you know, I always tell this story. I was actually pretty sick again recently. I've been getting dizzy again. And man, you know, you have days where you are so sick in bed, you start having thoughts like, man, I might never even be able to jack off again. Those are the kind of thoughts. Most people have probably never been dying before, but man, you get real sick, right? So you can be real sick. Point being, I wasn't feeling good recently. But you know, Accent Core came out at a time, and I'm like, you know what? There are some progressive ideas in the game, and there are some things that I like, right? And I've said I like the EX system in Guilty Gear, you know, but for every good EX move that is well thought out, you know what I mean? Like I said, Kai serendipitously has a lot of really interesting EX moves, you know what I mean? But for every cool EX move, you know, there's that sort of Mugen move. You know what I mean? The kind of move that the developer, he gave his son or his daughter at the weekends, like, hey buddy, you want to make a move in this video game? You know what I mean? And he's like, oh sure, let me put in a EX Sidewinder. So amazing, right? And I do feel like, you know, you know, there was no great epiphany. I feel like the game really, it just reinforces everything I've ever thought about games, right? You know, and that's why I thought Strive, I'm not against Strive. Because games need to be new, because when you look at a game like Plus R, it's like, man, what are you going to do? Characters are starting to become so oversaturated in the game. You know what I mean? Again, for every character that has interesting EX moves and you feel like they're becoming more fleshed out, you play characters that you're just like, man, this is just this EX move is a dumb reach. And an analogy I haven't given, or I don't think I've given about EX moves in Plus R before is, if you're old enough to remember, or maybe you've heard the story, you know, in Super Turbo, some old school guys don't actually like supers, right? Because they feel like supers are kind of like a scrub-a-dub kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? And for sure, though, I mean, I'm fine with supers, but, you know, I understand where, you know, I grew up during those days, so I can understand the perspective or appreciate it, at least, even if I don't agree. But, you know, again, you play Plus R, and man, a lot of these EX moves, you play people, and they're kind of like, you know, people say Guilty Gear is a hard game, and every game has its hard things. Some things are hard to do, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But Guilty Gear, as it progressed, even though Strive is supposed to be the easier game, make no mistake about it, and I think anyone that wants to have an intelligent conversation about a video game, you can play Plus R, and there are definitely things catered to people just learning the game. EX moves are not the most big brain kind of thing. A lot of EX moves are not well thought out. Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe well thought out isn't a great way to describe it, but they are not galaxy brain kind of thing. It's like, oh, here's my very powerful boom explosive move, right? Do you know what I mean? Here's my Sidewinder because I fucked up my Sidewinder combo. It's supposed to be, you know what I mean? So I have EX meter. Let me do it. You know, do you get what I'm saying? They are kind of, some of the EX moves in the game do feel like they are just catered there to be a dumb reach, help the quotation marks lesser player. And my thought has stayed the same almost 1,000 matches into the game. Again, I'm still very naive to the game. A lot of the matchups, I've told you, I've won all these matches that I have on a fucking broken controller on this. And I actually don't know if it's because I'm on this fucking Pelican converter too. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm on this Pelican converter, and this thing is very old. I've actually wondered if it's the converter as well, why so many inputs are dropping and my character stops moving. I wonder if there's actually, this converter is just so old, it's actually amplifying the fact of some of the shit that's going on. But, I'm doing a lot of cruise control kind of shit when I win. I'm not doing anything too complicated. I can't really do the impossible combo on this controller since it's wonk now. which is, you know, kind of disappointing, but at least I got some matches in when I first was playing on of me doing it. But, you know, Guilty Gear really is, and, you know, when Strive came out, or Strive was coming out, and, you know, I had this theory way before this, but Strive, you know, again, I'm not against the wall. You know, when they said they were making the wall, the idea is they don't want a lot of set play and all this kind of shit. And I said that before. One of the things about Guilty Gear is it did become a game, for better or worse, a victim of its own success. You know, it became that quintessential anime game, and you can really feel it. And even me playing now, I can really feel it even more. I remember when Accent Core came out, I was like, oh, I can tell the way this game is coming out. You know, when Plus R was coming out, you know, I could see it's just really just that set play thing. Every character knocks you down into their bullshit, their version of a big fireball. And then by the time that XR came out, XR is just fucking full blown. That's why I said XR was just kind of a one step forward, two steps back. And every new character they put in the game, it felt like was just like, oh, hey, I'm knocking you down into my version of a big fireball, right? Do you get what I'm saying? It's like, this is, for better or worse, this is what Guilty Gear is. And when I play people in these almost 1,000 matches, and I'm sure the haters, you know, they want to say like, oh, he's only played bad people. Dude, I've looked up some of these people's names. You guys are jacking them off, talking about how they're fucking amazing. I've beaten people that were on that 25 American team. These guys are the best. And I'm not saying, and again, because this hater will try to put words in my mouth, I'm not saying I would win tournaments. I've said many times I'm naive. But I have not played somebody and been impressed, been like, man, these are the guys you're saying are so much more amazing than me? Guys that I can beat on a broken controller? I mean, I don't play the game seriously. What excuses do you have versus me? You know what I mean? I don't think you can beat my excuse. I've had surgery on my hands, in and out of hospital. I've been really sick lately, dude. Broken controller. What's your excuse for losing to me when you guys constantly talk about how good you are and how much I supposedly faked all the tournaments I beat you at, right? But what I want to say there is, there's just such a quintessential thing. And again, I'm just saying everything that I've ever said about video games, what I said about Guilty Gear so many years ago that the game was becoming, the game is not evolved. It still is that, right? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if you're actually playing someone who is bad per se, or if you're playing someone who is good per se. That is the game. I knock you down into my bullshit, and can I execute it well enough? Can I beat you before you actually have a chance to get out of said bullshit? And so many characters, you know, I play a character like Kai. Again, my controller's kind of busted, so I'm not even really doing any of the crazy setups, but I'm just doing cruise control, simple shit that is, I knock you down into my bullshit, and I know there's more chances of this winning than it is losing. And when are you going to be able to get out of it? And take that for a grain of salt, because for what it's worth, of course, if you want to use the term loosely, knock you down into my bullshit, and then you got to hold that till you can get out of it. From a certain perspective, you could say that almost for any fighting game, right? You know, maybe I'm like, you know, saying something good about Guilty Gear as well. I'm kind of like trying to play both sides here, but from a certain perspective, when you play Super Turbo, Sagat is knocking you down into a super fast fireball at the time. You got to get out of that. You got to hold that till you can finally get out of his bullshit. Sometimes Vega knocks you down. Oh, you guessed wrong each time and you didn't reversal. That's his version of knock you down into my bullshit. Some characters have these tick throw loops, whatever. That's their version of bullshit. Every video game has its version of bullshit, right? So I played both sides there a little bit, but maybe Guilty Gear has a little... Can you even say that Guilty Gear has set play per se? I mean, as games have evolved, even Super Turbo, you know what I mean? Back in the day, people did not play with these stored DP and throw loops and everything like that. That is something that the game became as the game progressed. But again, every game has its good and bad, right? There's no perfect game. And, you know, sometimes you just like a said character in the game. I do enjoy the way Kai plays in Plus R. You know what I mean? I don't think he's perfect, but you know, I think there's a good idea of generalized there, you know what I mean? And some characters, but again, it's just kind of like, this is maybe there's just a little too much set play. Maybe there's just not enough you can do with this game because there's too much, because some of the new stuff they started adding is just becoming oversaturated. It doesn't really feel new, right? And do you get what I'm saying? Maybe you don't, because I'm playing both sides here. I just rambling about games to keep the channel active, right? But again, really, there's no perfect game. I don't think Strive is a bad idea, even though I'm not playing Strive. I haven't played it since, I think it was the first week or some bullshit that it came out. You know, I haven't played it since I made that last video. But, you know, Strive, there's not a problem with having a game like Strive. You need new games, because when you play Plus R, and even during Accent Core, you're like, man, what are you going to do with this game? Could you really have a Plus R? Maybe for some characters, right? I mean, there's still some ideas there. I mean, hey, I've said before, Strive, I like the shock state. That's a good thing. You could put that in Plus R, a little buff there, rework it a little bit. Rework some characters, but some characters you look at and you're like, what would you do with this character in the context of this game? Because it's already feeling, again, like dumb reaches, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of... And, you know, I think this is one of the problems with my problems, quotation marks, is I'm not like really a knee-jerk reaction person, not really like a hot take kind of person. You know, I've always see both sides of like the argument, right? And I try to look at the bigger picture of fighting games. And, you know, a lot of people want the super big shiller. Oh, this is the best game ever. Oh, this is the best ever. And I've never really felt that way. And even playing almost 1,000 matches of Plus R, I guess the point is my thoughts have never changed about a video game ever. It's almost probably kind of boring for people to watch in a sense that I'm just so logical. It's like, man, his opinion doesn't change, right? My opinion doesn't change. I can look at a game and see what it's going to turn into. And the game hasn't really evolved that I've seen, right? I mean, some characters have evolved. I mean, you see, there's that one Japanese Justice guy. I mean, man, I remember when Justice was kind of a novelty character when the game first came out. But, you know, drastically changing, though. The game has not drastically changed. The core concept of the game is still pretty similar. And, again, I just feel like it just drives home everything. Sometimes, you know, because, again, I feel like I don't have a lot of will to play video games right now. And I actually like playing a lot of old video games sometimes, more so than newer games. And it just, again, kind of proves that, you know, sometimes, you know, I just kind of like this character in this game. Maybe you just like this game because it's what your friends were playing. You know, talk about the dangers of progression. But you still need new games, right? So, I don't know. That's me rambling about video games. Probably a whole lot of nothing. But if you watched it, thanks, I guess, right? I don't fucking know, dude. The end.